7:07, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I want to get right to the Newsmaker Hotline. Congressman John Rose is joining us. Thank you very much for being here. So a very big day today, number of different things going on. First of all, the full House is going to vote on the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas. Any predictions as to what's going to happen?
I think it's going to be a close vote. I think it'll be a partisan vote. Unfortunately, the folks on the other side, the Democratic Party members in the House, are just not willing to hold Secretary Mayorkas accountable. So I think it will pass very narrowly, all with Republican votes.
So you don't, and this is fascinating to me because there is so obviously a crisis on the southern border. And one of the things that I've been saying for a long time, and you tweeted this out yesterday, the southern border crisis is not a result of failed policy. It is the policy of the Biden administration. Congressman, I've been saying that for a long time. You know, when it comes to the impeachment of Mayorkas, one of the things that I was talking about yesterday is that the Democrats keep saying, well, you know, you can't impeach a man over, you know, a policy disagreement. And effectively, then what they're saying is that this is the policy of the Biden administration to let all of these folks in.
And I've heard that argument, but I think the committee has framed this very well, and we've heard, and so a lot of people probably haven't heard the argument. The laws that created the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11 obligate the secretary to enforce the laws. So it's not just a question of what is the policy of the president that this secretary serves. This secretary has independent sworn obligations to enforce the laws of the United States, and Secretary Mayorkas has failed to do that. So he has, violated his oath of office.
As a member of Congress, I mean, you're up to speed far more than, you know, the rest of us. But, you know, I've got to ask, because we are now involved in a situation where we've had a weak response to Iran killing 3 of our service members. We have, of course, China and Russia. All of our enemies around the world are watching the president's, so far, weak response. How worried are you that, you know, we've got a lot of bad hombres coming across our southern border, and we really don't know what we don't know?
I'm very concerned about it. If you think about it, our foes around the world, our detractors around the world, if they're not taking advantage of this opportunity to get bad actors into the country, then they're not very smart. And we know they are smart. They are clever, crafty. And so I think we can rest assured that they are sending folks in. Of course, they can probably send them in at any time, but why not take advantage of this opportunity to get folks into the country completely, undetected? And that's just one of the many ways in which the president's border policy is just a tragedy for this country.
You know, it's interesting. Before you joined us at the end of the last hour, Congressman John Rose joining us, by the way, more U.S. voters than ever see a crisis at the southern border. A record high 57% of voters say the United States is facing a crisis of illegal immigration at the U.S. southern border. Of particular note is the fact that Democrats are really noticing this, and that is up 29 points from April of 2019. In other words, if there's anything that's bipartisan about where the American people are these days, it is that we do have a crisis on the southern border. Now, the Senate's border deal, as you know, as well as funding for Ukraine, all of that is top of the news this morning, as it was yesterday. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has said that border deal is going to be dead on arrival, $60 billion for Ukraine, of course. And most people say that the plan that Mitch McConnell has worked on with Chuck Schumer will not protect the southern border. And so what I've seen is that most Republicans are saying that this will not pass the House of Representatives. As a matter of fact, Mike Johnson has said they may not even bring this up for a vote.
And I don't believe he should bring it up for a vote, because we know Democrats would support it. There'll be some others who like parts of it that might support it. So it might have a chance of passing. I don't think so. in its current form. As you've already said, the president already has the power to control what's happening at the southern border. He chooses not to do so. It is his policy to let these folks into the country. Now, 8 million and counting since he's in the short while that he's been president. And so this is his policy. All this bill does, in addition to spending billions and billions of our grandchildren, great-grandchildren's money that we're essentially stealing from them, all it does is legalize what the president is already doing. And so it would be foolish on our part. If I thought there was some forward progress here, I might actually consider this. But there is no forward progress here. This is actually putting into law the terrible policies of this administration. It will make it legal for literally millions to come illegally across it would then be legal for these folks to be coming into our country. They wouldn't have complete status, but they would certainly be able to come into the country. And we don't need that. And, of course, spends billions of dollars, sends billions of dollars to Hamas and the Palestinians. We've seen what that buys us and what it buys for Israel. And none of this is paid for. And so, I don't really see anything here that is positive. And if you aren't already cynical, I would encourage you to go to your computer and search for the text of this bill. Bring it up and try to read some of it. If you're having trouble sleeping, this would be an excellent way to get to sleep quickly, because it is just maddening. The only reason it wouldn't put you to sleep is because it might make you so mad that you couldn't sleep.
Your Vice Chair of Oversight and Investigations, Hunter Biden, has agreed to appear for a deposition finally on February 28th. A long time coming, of course. What are you expecting, and how are you preparing for this?
Well, so I'm vice chair of the Oversight Committee on the Financial Services Committee, not on the committee that is investigating Hunter Biden, which is the main oversight committee here. So my committee focuses on banking institutions, financial institutions, and conducting oversight today. We're going to, for example, today our committee will have Secretary Yellen testifying, the Financial Services Committee, that is. So, but as it relates to Hunter Biden, I mean, I think this is long overdue. Obviously, the need to have a deposition, a lot of people have questioned this, is because, you can't just bring somebody like Hunter Biden in and have a hearing where each side gets a series of 5-minute questions. That's no way to conduct the kind of interview that needs to happen with Hunter Biden, where, we need attorneys that can dig into the issues, follow the trails, and it doesn't need to be a media spectacle. And so that's what's going to happen. I think you see that Hunter Biden and his attorneys ultimately knew that he would be held in contempt of Congress if he didn't come. So that's why they ultimately relented. And also it was just a delaying tactic on their part. They're trying to kick the can down the road. And they've effectively done that. But now he's ultimately going to be coming in for a deposition. And hopefully it will provide, an opportunity to get him under oath and get answers to some of these questions that, frankly, he doesn't have good answers to, about the money that he's taken for essentially selling influence and effectuating policy that was helpful to our foes around the world and to these Ukrainian, Russian, Chinese business people and oligarchs. And that's what this is going to be about.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, number one, what he has to say, but number two, is how much the Republicans will be able to get out of him regarding the testimony. So that's something that I know that a lot of folks, including yours truly, are very interested in. Very quickly, as we run out of time, Congressman John Rose joining us. Are you satisfied with Mike Johnson, Speaker Mike Johnson, for the House? Is he living up to your expectations? Some people say it's a mixed bag. Other people say he's doing great. What say you?
Well, I think fairly it's a mixed bag. It is a very tough job, when we have a 1 or 2 vote majority on any given day, and sometimes we don't even have that if folks are absent. So it's easy to throw rocks when you're not the guy in the seat and having to make the tough calls. What I would say to Speaker Johnson is, if you're going to draw red lines, we've got to stick by those. So, for example, I supported last November providing supplemental assistance to Israel that was paid for by cutting the army of IRS agents that President Biden is trying to force upon us. I think we should stick by our guns there and refuse to do this another way. And that's the way I view the current legislation. We've got to pay for it. If we're going to help our friends around the world, we have to find a way to pay for it. And we know in Washington there's only three ways to pay for things. The first way is to borrow money. That's unacceptable in this situation. The second way is to cut other spending in Washington. And the third way is to raise your taxes. And none of us want to see that. That's not a good path. Well, I'll say none of us. Some of the folks on the other side would be happy to do that. But we know that we're paying enough taxes, and the answer is that we have to cut the wasteful spending in Washington.
719 Nashville's Morning News. Final question, of course, in the news last couple of days has been President Biden's response to Iran and what they did, murdering three of our members of the military in a terror attack. And so one of the things that people are debating is whether or not Joe Biden, the president, has been retaliating forcefully enough, and seems to be a lot of debate. Some Democrats are saying that what he is doing is trying to keep us out of World War III. There's a lot of conservatives that are saying that his response has been incredibly weak, and that, of course, will embolden our enemies. We touched on this earlier, but where are you at on the president's response, and what would you like him to do?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show this morning. And I think we know this story. We've seen it over and over again through the years with various presidents. This president has been the poster child for weak, feckless responses. That's why we see, evil on the rise around the world. He waited too long to respond. He telegraphed his response. My wife and I were laughing about this over the weekend before these strikes when the president was saying, well, he's decided what he's going to do, as in warning bad guys, here comes the response. And so, as long as our enemies know that this president is more afraid of them than they should be of him, then we're going to have trouble. And that's the message he's sending, is that he's somehow afraid of taking the fight to them. And what he should be telegraphing is, you don't know when we're going to respond, you don't know where we're going to respond, and it's going to hurt. And so don't do the things that you've been doing. But instead, it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to punch you, and you can hit me over here, and I'll hit you over there. It won't really bother you. And that is not the way that you deter these enemies. They're determined to cause trouble. They're determined to inflict pain and injury. And so we see Americans dying because this president is unwilling to show a forceful response. And we know that the 45th president, President Trump, he responded strongly. He hit the Iranians hard, and it was not surprising then that they backed down.
It's all about peace through strength, and I appreciate it. John Rose, Congressman John Rose, thank you very much for joining us on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Have a great rest of week.